Hello, Dr. Mitar. Hello, class. My name is Dorian, and I'm here to represent Group 14. Our topic for this project is the comparison of healthcare systems between the United States and Cuba. This project was made possible by the individual contributions of myself, Mike, Jerry, and Aaron. In our research, we found that the medically advanced but exclusive medical care in the United States is equally comparable to the more accessible and austere all-inclusive medical care in Cuba. Our arguments are based on the comparison between wealth, access to medications and providers, as well as the research and development encouraged in each system. Based on independent studies and research as well as evidence from the World Bank, the healthcare quality in a country is based on the wealth of that country. What that means is basically the better the economy is doing, the better the healthcare system is. This is very true in the United States of America that has very highly industrialized economy. This, however, has not been the case with Cuba. The main difference there is that Cuba has suffered through its fair share of turmoil, did not have that continuous and peaceful development of its economic resources. Therefore, their economy is suffering. Another factor that we need to consider is the close partnership of Cuba with the former Soviet Union. After the fall of the Soviet Union, Cuba lost a lot of its supplies that were presented or given to them by the USSR. Basically, now that means there is very limited resources in Cuban hospitals, from simple supplies like bandages and sterile dressings all the way to sophisticated machines like CT scans and X-ray machines. Despite the clear differences between the two economic systems which reflect their healthcare capabilities, Cuban healthcare system is considered to be one of the best in the world. It serves as a model to many countries in Europe, Canada, and some Asian countries as well. Another considerable difference is that the healthcare system in Cuba is socialized. Basically, that means it's run by the government and it is controlled by the government. Now, given that our government just recently passed the healthcare bill, which will introduce coverage for many uninsured citizens, our healthcare system is still defined by the private sector, which entails into private corporations creating and running their own hospitals, their supply departments, pharmacies, manufacturers, and everything. Another vast difference between the two systems is the tiers of care. The tiers of care could be characterized of a patient's accessibility to certain treatment. In Cuba, basically every patient has the ability to self-refer to a higher or specialized treatment. If that person is suffering from a cardiac condition, he could bypass his primary care provider and go all the way to a cardiac expert and have all his issues addressed. In the US, this is not the case. Our system is designed to filter and use the primary care provider as the one who has the key, if you will, to the higher or more advanced and expert type of care. If a person suspects that he or she broke her hand per se, and they must first go to their primary provider, and then have him refer them to a X-ray specialist.
Oh, hi. How are you? I didn't know you'd be here today. My name is Aaron Green. Now, as Dorian was saying, as for values with Cuba and healthcare, Cuba has assumed responsibility to provide healthcare for all of its citizens, whereas the U.S. has provided healthcare on a multi-payer system, which means that each citizen has to pay for their own healthcare. Let's talk about the US real quick. Like I said, they're a multi-payer system, which means that each person has to pay for their own health care. Regardless of actually who is paying for their health care, there are certain inequalities built into a system, which also are similar to the ones in Cuba. Inequalities such as where you're located, what age you are, pre-existing conditions, as well as if you have a job or not, are all parts of how much you have to pay for health care. Many people in the US get their own health care from their job. So what's to say with people that are unemployed? They can still get health care, but does it cost more or does it cost less? Is that discrimination? Moving on to Cuba, there are still some underlying inequalities in their system as well, even though there is universal health care coverage. Most of that comes from how the government allocates its money. Does it focus on children, on women, on the elderly? As the Cuban healthcare system starts to change because their population starts to become older, it'll be interesting to see how their government changes as well. So whether or not you look at the US system or the Cuba system, there are pluses and minuses on either side. However, each system could be considered very complementary to the other, with US R&D and state-of-the-art technology and access to a global market, which includes drugs. And you pair that with the preventative and universal coverage that Cuba gives, one could actually find a highly technical, effective, and all-inclusive system.
Rock and roll.